Hi there, this is Dylan, and I want to preface this video by saying that I am really hungry right now. I haven't had a chance to eat yet today, and I wanted to wait to make this video until I had so that I was more grounded, but I feel like I just have to get all this off of my chest, so I'm just gonna go ahead and make this now. But if I'm a bit bumbly because of that, I apologize. So, I'm making this video from a hotel room. I have, by the grace of my partner's family, been able to be inside for the past couple of nights, get off the street, and do some more healing, specifically around some stuff that happened on the street the day that we went inside a couple days ago. And that's honestly what I want to talk about mainly in this video. I was going to do a Tumblr post, but I've decided that I should just go ahead and make a video about this, as I feel like this story could really benefit a lot of people if told. So, I was sitting on the sidewalk on my suitcase and going through some of my stuff with my partner near where we sleep. It was the late afternoon, and it was too early for us to actually go to our sleeping spot and sleep, but we decided to sit in front of it to guard it and go through some of our belongings, as we had acquired a bunch of new stuff from a homeless service thing, and we're not able to get very far with our stuff at any given time because there was just too much of it. So we were going through it looking for stuff to give away to other street people. When two cops came up, but I only saw one, really, at first. And the officer who actually came up and talked to us first told us that we needed to be standing, that we could not sit on the sidewalk or on anything of ours on the sidewalk, that we needed to be standing, but otherwise we could be there. And I wasn't going to argue with him, as I knew that this was technically the law, and I did not wish to have any issues with the cops beyond the simple issue, but serious issue, of them telling me that I had to stand, not sit, when I have knee problems and am in a lot of pain and am exhausted and really needed to be sitting during that time and had nowhere else to really go. So I wasn't going to argue with him, and I watched him walk away. And then I turned to my partner, and I told him, not very loudly, but loud enough that the other cop that I didn't realize was still standing there could hear. I said, with anxiety, that my knees were really hurting, and I did not feel like I could stand. I said, I don't think this is going to work for me. To which the other cop made himself apparent. And he very indignantly, showing that he was offended that I wasn't talking to him personally about this, told me that he was there and he was a cop and I could talk to him. So I turned and I looked at him and I was like, I don't want to fucking deal with this bullshit. But I looked at him and I said what I said to my partner. I said, I have knee problems and I don't feel like I can stand right now. And the guy got this very sadistic grin on his face. The man had sunken eyes that indicated drug use, and a sadistic smile that indicated an antisocial personality, with very vacant, half-closed eyes to match. And he grinned at me, and he started trying to toy with me emotionally and make me feel as small as possible. And he ended up telling me that I couldn't sit on my suitcase, but I could sit on the very painful to sit on metal bike rack behind my suitcase, which would not have helped my knees and would have been very painful for anyone with remotely any ability to physically feel pain, to sit on. It'd be very fucking uncomfortable. And for me, as an autistic person with serious sensory issues and a lot of chronic pain, I immediately flashed on the pain that I have felt in the past of sitting on things like that, and I looked at him and I said, that would be very uncomfortable for me. I don't think that's going to work. To which he moved in and grinned at me even wider and asked me if I needed an ambulance, which I believe was a gaslighting attempt to make me feel like I was being outrageous and ridiculous by suggesting that I had needs, like not sitting on incredibly uncomfortable metal bars that would dig into my skin, or needs like not standing when I have serious knee pain. And I don't remember what all was said after that. My partner ended up getting them to go away and agree to leaving us alone to sit there for a little bit, and then we would move on. But, you know, the guy actually said something. I remember this now. It's coming back in a fragment. Everything comes back in fragments to me when it's traumatic because I have polyfragment and DID. And another thing that he said that really enraged me was, shit, now because it's traumatic, it's starting to go away again. It's like the fragments come up and then recede and then come up and recede, and it's very frustrating. What was it that he said? It's there. I know it's there. I can see it in my mind, the part holding it. I'm going inside and asking the part for the memory, because it was just there a second ago. God, it's so frustrating. This is why I'd make a very terrible witness in a court of law. And taking my abusers to court would not work out for me regarding my childhood stuff. Not just because the system is fundamentally rigged against me as a survivor in, you know, the most basic ways, but the dissociation, the way it's rigged against me in terms of just the dissociation alone, it's a huge problem. What did he say? It was just there. I'm just going to sit until it comes back. It was really awful, and that's why parts are holding it back. Despite the fact that I just saw it a second ago inside. Oh yes, okay. Thank you, little part, for giving it to me. Finally, he said that, oh my God, now it's going back away again. This is so frustrating. I can't begin to tell you guys how frustrating this is. I know any polyfragmented people who are watching this understand. A lot of it's our hunger. I think that's preventing us. Oh yeah, he said that it was okay for us to sit on the bike thing because he didn't want us to be sitting there for the rest of my life. And he said it in this incredibly sadistic, menacing, just awful tone with this awful, awful grin, you know, sociopathic grin. And the implication of that, of course, was that it would be okay for me to sit on the sidewalk as long as I was sitting on a structure that was causing me physical pain and injury. Because I was inherently lazy as a disabled homeless person, and sitting on my suitcase was comfortable, and if sitting on my suitcase was comfortable for me, then that was very bad, because that would encourage me to sit there longer, and it would not be properly punishing me like the bike rack would be punishing me were I to sit on it. The bike stand, you know, the thing that people attach their bikes to. So, yeah, that sent me over the edge, and of course, at that point, I saw him closing in on me, and I started to stand up painfully, and I was like, look, I'm not trying to, you know, have an issue here with a capital I. That's not what I said, but that's what I was trying to say. At which point, my partner, I made them go away. But it was extremely painful encountering a cop that was that obviously cruel and antisocial, and as a survivor of ritual abuse and mind control, I am sure, without any proof of this or anything except my own instincts, I can say that I am sure that this guy was involved. and I would be shocked if he was not a very serious child predator. Encountering anybody like that causes me a lot of pain. But this is not where the story ends. So, after this happened and the cops left, I was in a dissociated, traumatized, and exasperated state. And I started venting to my partner about how horrible this whole thing was. And I noticed that a lot of the more well-off folks in the neighborhood we were in were staring at me. And I did a thing that I learned to do as a trafficked child, which is that whenever I was in the above-ground world, I would passive-aggressively take the opportunity to educate people who were more privileged, who were participating, complicit in my situation. I'd take the opportunity to educate them, like I said, with some passive aggression about my situation. And so I said things for them to hear without actually talking to them directly. And I sort of glanced around as I did so, and I must have looked rather intense. But I spoke as clearly as possible, and I just sort of repeated over and over again what had happened to my partner while kind of glancing around at the rich people walking by, exclaiming about how, I was exclaiming just about how absurdly fucked up this was, and, I could not believe, but I couldn't, that this guy really had suggested that it would be okay for me to sit as a homeless person as long as it was hurting me. And, I saw some people look and I think genuinely empathize to some degree, other people not so much, but then this woman walking by with her daughter, who's maybe about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old, stopped. And with their backs turned, this woman stopped and had her daughter stop with her and listen to what I was saying. This could have been a good thing. However, this woman registered to me on an energetic level as identical to my narcissistic mother who tortured me and ritually abused me as a child. And I'm not saying that means that this woman was actually RA involved, but she registered to me almost immediately as a narcissistic mother with capital letters. The vibe just of her listening, it just overwhelmingly brought me into a sense of, oh shit, here's my mother showing up in another form again, Because really, I think all narcissists, and specifically narcissistic mothers, are kind of the same, whether they're covert or overt or malignant or not, or whatever labels you want to attach to it. I feel like at the core, they're all kind of the same, especially when they get into mother mode and are being abusive towards their kids. And in this case, I had the strong suspicion that this woman, who was obviously well off, was stopping to listen so that her daughter could listen and so that she could use it in some way to educate her daughter about how awful homeless people are. And this was just an instinct that I had. I grew up with a mother who would do these things with me. She would take me aside and have me witness homeless people in public and then say awful things about them to me to try to condition me to hate and fear them so that I would stay under her control and that I would be a good little puppet for the aristocracy. And so whether these people were RA or not, I could tell that this woman was like my mother, and that she was probably stopping to do some horrible form of miseducation with her child. And I took the opportunity to quickly start restating what I'd said for the daughter's benefit and to give as clear and concise of a testimony about what had happened with the cop as possible in a short time, hoping that maybe this little girl would get some truth before her mother scrambled her brain about it. And I made sure to do so in a way that I didn't think would tarnish her innocence, whatever innocence was left, but would legitimately help mitigate some of the damage that I felt intuitively the mother was going to use this to do. and they walked away shortly after. Right when I finished, I saw them walking away, still with their backs turned, but it felt like they waited until I finished and left. And then I left to go warn somebody else who we knew in the area who's homeless that there was a rather predatory, aggressive cop on the loose, and I wanted them to be careful. And as I was walking down the street to go do this, I passed by the mother and her child, who I guess had been nearby still the whole time, as they were walking back the other way. And when I passed them, two things happened. The mother gave this triumphant but very fake-sounding sigh that sounded identical to the sigh that my mother used to passive-aggressively give when she had just finished unloading all her rage in some way or another and felt like she had won. And at the same time, the little girl looked me dead in the face, and I looked at her, and no words were spoken. But it was one of the most powerful exchanges that I think I've ever had with another human being, and I feel like I'm going to cry now. This little girl had this look of intensely adult, yet at the same time childlike confusion and rage and fear and just general emotional torment. All the negative emotions kind of mixed into one face, and both in this very adult-like and very childlike way, I felt like all this agony was just being reflected at me. I don't entirely know what that mother said to her child about me, but it felt very apparent that what I suspected had happened, that she had pulled her child aside and said some absolute garbage about me and other street people. And I did not entirely feel like the little girl believed everything the mother had said. I didn't see the girl looking at me purely with hate or anything. It didn't even exactly feel like hate, but there was just so much agony there and so much distrust. And she looked at me with this face of betrayal, like I had deeply betrayed her, but she didn't understand why. And this may have been her feelings about her mother that she was wearing on her face when she looked at me, but the way she looked me in the eyes, it just felt very strongly like this was something that she was reflecting at me specifically. Gave me a lot to think about and reflect on with my own childhood, growing up with wealthy narcissists and all their conditioning, and the look on the girl's face, like I said, it didn't completely feel like hate or anything. There was a lot of confusion there, which honestly gives me hope for that child. If she was confused, that's actually a good sign, because she should be feeling overwhelming cognitive dissonance in the face of her mother's narcissism mixed with the completely contradictory reality of my disenfranchisement. But I've put her into my prayer list inside. I have a gigantic list of people, largely children, who I have witnessed being harmed, who I pray for on a daily basis. We use our eidetic memory and our dissociative skills to store all of these people in our subconscious mind, and to direct good energy at them and at the universe regarding them. And it's actually come up for me today that I really need to do some cleansing within my system and let go of some of these practices and unify my energy more amongst parts and stop using so many of our MK Ultra conditioned tools, which having, eidetic lists of thousands of people is part of. So I am going to be letting go of some of that responsibility I have taken on for other people who are suffering. But I'm going to be continuing to direct equal amounts of compassion and love, if not more, because there will be less associative walls at people who I see suffering, and I'm not going to forget that child, and I'm going to, for a while, focus on meditation for that kid, because it hit home on such a core level for me. And if that child is going through anything like what I went through as a kid, then I want all of the love in the world to be aimed at them. So that is my testimony. This was 20 minutes long, oh my goodness. That happened. And I have more updates to give about our situation, but right now I'm just going to leave it at this. Thank you to all of you who bared with me through this, who have borne witness to me and my suffering, as well as the suffering I have told of that others have experienced in the situation. And thank you to all who waited for me to remember what that awful thing was that cop said. I hope that I brought some healing and humor to anyone else with structural dissociation around it. Thank you.